In an era where streetball was at its peak, Troy Jackson stood out from the rest of the pack, and I mean that in a quite literal sense. If that name doesn't ring a bell to you, maybe it's his moniker Escalade that gives you a nostalgic flashback of And One highlight mixtapes being showcased at Rucker Park. Escalade defies any law written about human anatomy. Having point guard skills is just impossible for a guy his size. He'll definitely be gassed out after running up and down the court, and he's just too fat to play ball rhetoric were just some of the usual doubts that critics instilled in him. Regardless of that, Escalade put his game in another gear, stayed true to who he was, and swerved back to prove his naysayers wrong. Standing at 6'10" and weighing almost 400 pounds, Jackson was a supersized walking spectacle that wowed the crowd, primarily due to his larger-than-life persona, and even more so with his impressive guard-like handles and skills. But as soon as he wrapped those sneakers up, he was sadly taken away from us at just the tender age of 35. In this video, we'll take a look back at the life of Troy Escalade Jackson, one of the foundational pieces that thrust streetball under the limelight of the mainstream media, and who also provided another perspective on how we view traditional big men. Born on January 11, 1973, Troy Jackson was born in a city that was a strong blend of hip-hop and basketball culture in Queens, New York. Troy, like most younger siblings, had to live in his brother's shadow, which is doubly challenging when you have a brother that played in the NBA. In case you were unaware of Escalade's family tree, his older brother happens to be the fourth highest assist leader in the league history, who also owns the "Mama, there goes that man" catchphrase, Mark Jackson. The older Jackson was drafted in the 18th pick overall by the Knicks in 1987. The young Troy would also come to see his brother play in the world's most famous arena, and his love for the game would start to blossom from that point on. As he grew older, both in size and wisdom, Escalade didn't want to be simply known as Mark Jackson's massive younger bro, and he decided to create a path of his own. This is what Escalade told one of his closest friends named Grayson Boucher, who is well known for his nickname as the Professor. Boucher recalled the relationship that Escalade had with his brother, and in his words, Big Troy didn't want to live off Mark's popularity as an NBA star, but rather carve his own space in the world of basketball. Quote, Troy and Mark were super close friends, talked on the phone several times a day, but he never put it out there because he didn't want to leech off his brother's fame. He wanted to make it on his own, to pave his own way. Once I asked him, why don't you put it out there that you're his brother? People are shocked. I'm just trying to make my own way, he told me. His mother Marie would also add some personal insights about the tight-knit bond that the brothers had living within the confines of the Jackson household. She said, quote, Troy did come out of nowhere, and it took us a little while to really reconnect. It took him a little while to mature, I think because Mark made Troy feel like he had it all. Mark made him feel like he was a part of everything in the NBA life, and that made Troy a brat for a little bit. But he matured, he became a gentle giant. He and Mark obviously had a really special relationship. When Escalade was in his senior year playing for Hills East High School in Long Island, his weight had already ballooned to almost 500 pounds. But despite that, it didn't hinder him from being a productive force on the court. His performance garnered the attention of Coach Bill Hewley of Wallace Community College. Soon after meeting Hewley, Escalade quickly enrolled at Wallace, where he would prove his worth by earning all-region honors while playing there as a sophomore. After finishing with a stellar showing in high school, Escalade made some heads turns in the collegiate ranks, and this included the Division I school of the University of Louisville. He had been granted a scholarship to play for the Cardinals on the condition that he would adhere to a strict weight management program, which Escalade stuck to and lost some of the fat and dialed down to the weight of 350 during his 2-year stint at Louisville. In the 20 games he appeared, he only managed to tally 3 points and just 1.6 rebounds per game. Despite being a part of a premier basketball program, most people think that Troy was just nothing more than a crowd-pleasing mascot that entered whenever Louisville was either down or up by 30. His path to the NBA continued to grow slimmer and slimmer as he grew larger and larger, plus the fact that he wasn't able to showcase much of his stuff due to his limited minutes on the court. At the tail end of his short-lived NCAA career, Escalade had to reroute and find a way to make a name for himself, even if it wasn't in the NBA. Troy decided he would not give up on his dream of playing basketball. Escalade eventually became a part of the Harlem Globetrotters act while he continued to be active in the booming streetball scene in the heart of New York. Escalade was a showman at heart and remained true to his roots, and later on, his biggest break came when And One integrated NYC's rich streetball culture into the marketing strategy of their growing sneakers line. The creative fusion between And One and streetball was a match made in heaven. The once unknown and seemingly underground basketball culture had been catapulted into the mainstream media. And as the popularity of And One's premier hoop crew exponentially grew, so did the huge pile of money and unlimited opportunities that came along with it. In fact, Escalade's dream of outshining his more popular brother came to fruition when he was featured in an edition of Sports Illustrated along with his And One teammates. But despite the glitz and glamour attached with being one of the most recognizable streetball stars, Escalade was a gentle giant that knew how to handle the unprecedented fame that he suddenly achieved. According to the personal anecdote of the public relations manager of the And1 crew, Escalade was a fun-loving, affable big man that was very accommodating to his fans. Quote, S joined us for the tour in 2003, right as we were really taking off, and he had a huge presence with his fans. We'd do the autograph lines after the games, and people would be intimidated at first because of his size, but he was such a big teddy bear. People would like it. Of course, I'm a fan of yours, but I didn't know you'd be so nice in person. He'd talk people's heads off about where they went to school and what they were into, much friendlier than people would expect. Escalade made the And1 crew a must-see basketball event whenever they toured different places around the world. No one witnessed Escalade's impressive skills more up close and personal than his good friend the Professor. In an interview, he talked about how good Escalade was at his craft, showcasing his passing and dribbling prowess while dominating opponents in the paint. Quote, he was so smooth, with great hands and touch. On the streetball level, people loved him because of the way he could pass and handle for a big guy. I don't think there's ever been anyone in streetball with his size that could move and handle like he did. People just love him. Just look today, his videos go crazy viral. I'd say 2003, 2004 was his prime. There were many times when he'd do a move and then dunk in the lane. A lot of guys can lose their balance after a move when they get in the lane. S could finish his move with a dunk. That was always really impressive, especially at 6'9", 400 pounds. Sure, Escalade remained humble and continued to do what he does best on the court, but the other thing that lingered throughout his career was his unhealthy eating habit. Ever since his younger years, his father would often buy him Big Macs every salary day, and this habit had been ingrained in Escalade's eating pattern throughout the years. Quote, as he got older, he was playing less because he was out of shape. There would be seasons where he'd get back in shape, but basically, he made no major efforts about it. I remember Mark and I talked about it one summer, and we pretty much agreed S is going to be S. He's not going to change, the Professor was quoted in an interview. As the tour became more frequent and the competition became tougher, Escalade had to carry his massive weight night in and night out, and eventually the guy was nicknamed after a Cadillac SUV had broken down for good. On February 20th, 2011, at 35 years of age, Troy was found unresponsive lying in his hotel room. Moments later, the shocking news of his death due to hypertensive heart disease broke the news and sent shockwaves through the basketball community. 10 years after his death, Escalade's basketball legacy remains relevant and intact thanks to the social media platforms like YouTube and Instagram, where we can replay his eye-popping mixtape highlights over and over again. Troy Jackson paved a way for a new breed of big men and changed the way we see the game in terms of respective positions. There's a flurry of skilled big men nowadays in the NBA, but before you adore and look up these big dudes, you always have to remember that there was an even bigger dude that came before them who could do the stuff they're doing with an extreme ease with such amazing flair. If you liked this feature story about Escalade Jackson, make sure to hit the thumbs up and drop the video a like. If you also like this type of basketball content, please do hit the subscribe button and make sure to turn on the notifications so you don't miss out on the awesome content that we're making. Do you think Escalade would have been a force to deal with in today's game? Where do you think Escalade would have fit best in the modern NBA? Let us know your thoughts on this one in the comments below.